Hello everyone, what is up? Welcome back to another video. I am Nastya Shutka if you do not know me. And well, today is going to be a bit of a different video. We are actually going to go a bit back in time to a project that I had done during university, which I am currently sitting in front of a piece of it. Now, a piece, you're probably wondering why a piece? Well, I kind of had to destroy the best piece that I made because it was way too large for me to store anywhere. And I've had the footage of me doing this for a while now, probably for a really long time now. And frankly, I just didn't know how to put this into a video. But in this video, I will be explaining how I basically had to cut up what I would consider my masterpiece or the best piece that I have done up until this point. And frankly, it has been the most rewarding journey making this piece and coming up with it, but it has been absolutely tragic to have cut this piece up and destroyed it into pieces of its former self, right? Now, this is actually the second time that I'm filming this video because the first time I nearly got concussed by my own amazing piece. This is going to be a very short introduction in comparison to other videos because I literally just have to get into it and what this was. So I know you haven't seen anything, but like, subscribe, leave a comment and share this video. Make sure to click the notification bell and check me out on all my other socials if you haven't done so already. So let's get started. So as I just said in the intro, I am sitting in front of a piece of my old artwork. I have split it into 5 pieces. Now, the reason I had to split was the fact that it was actually way too large, okay? I made it 3 meters by 1.5 meters, which is just shy off of my entire height. So only the height of this was basically me, let alone the length was almost double me. Now, the reason why I made it so big was because at the time I just didn't even have a concept of making it transportable or disassembleable because I was making it for my degree show and I was in panic mode of making and finishing this piece. I did not use my time well. I am so bad at procrastinating. That is literally my #1 downfall, and it was no different with my degree show. I literally didn't start planning until the last possible minute, and then all of a sudden all my ideas came rushing in and I had something to make, along with the fact that I had to make this piece in time for my degree show. And it wasn't just this, I also had a second piece to make, and it was just to the point where I couldn't even do it by myself. I had to get my best friend to come and help me as if this was a production line in a factory, okay? With my degree show, we had just come out of COVID. It was the first year that we sort of were getting back into in-person teaching. We were so used to being lazy and not doing anything that like the thought of a degree show was just not even on the dome. But to top it off, to make my entire process harder, it was also one of the worst situations that could have possibly happened was that in February, we ended up having a full-scale invasion. And right now I'm talking about it sort of nonchalantly, but at the time, sadly, it's become something that we deal with every single day and we think about every single day. So it's just become normal, I guess. When that happened, it was the worst thing I have felt probably ever, because I'm not a very anxious person. I'm not a very stressed person, but that entire situation just flipped me in a whole different direction. And so it was amazing timing as well with one of the most important things that I had to do in my educational life, probably. But I understand that me talking about that, having been completely distanced from it, living here, not being there, not having to experience the things that the people there were experiencing, I understand it's not even a comparison. Obviously, I still have family there, and I have family who are very close to the border with the aggressor, and that entire time frame was absolutely terrible, as you probably saw back then on the news, that all those areas were just getting absolutely destroyed, demolished, bombed, and you know, it was I'm not going to get too deeply into it, but it was definitely horrific to worry about family and have that happen when it was something that everyone said was not going to happen. So frankly, it was just not the best thing that could have happened. Again, a very large understatement, but I'm not going to go into specifics with it. Now, with all of that in mind, being a procrastinator, with having the largest conflict post-COVID, probably of the decade so far, just hitting, you know, the 2020s with a bang, of course. Before all of this, I had a project going on which had to do with laser cutting. I was doing projects that were based on laser cutting and on modernized Ukrainian patterns, which is something that I've always looked into. Patterns are a very big motif in my work, even through like physically drawing them or making them through some other way. So I had something along the lines of this going on with a lot of my patterns. I might put up a picture here for you to see what project I was working on at the time. Now, I had another thing going on here, which I'll put right here as well. These were two things that I was sort of looking into at the time, which was, again, two different ways of me exploring patterns. And when I had done these projects, obviously they were very, very in their early stages. They were in the beta. Like, I had not thought through it very well. I had some ideas, some vague understandings of what I wanted to do, but it was just sort of all over the place still. So having come into now my degree show stage and having this massive life event looming over my head, it was like I didn't quite understand where I wanted to go with this whole thing. I didn't feel very content with that project that I made, even though I absolutely love that project. Like, I didn't feel quite right for that to be my final show of everything that I had learned in university, which, I'm a preface, I didn't really learn anything from the tutors or anything from that university. I'm not going to lie. Everything I learned by myself and explored by myself. The only thing I can give credit for to this university is that it was small and it had actually really good equipment for a small university. And so small university plus really good equipment means it's not that busy. I got to hog the crap out of those machines, okay? I was on the laser cutter from AM to PM almost every single day, all week round. And you know what? I bet you the people in that department hated me, but the staff loved me, okay? Because I was literally there all the time. All them acrylic fumes just in my lungs, amazing. I didn't feel that that was a good representation of me, made me come to the conclusion of making this. So this was a product of all my emotions, my feelings of the situation. My thought process for it was that I had to make something grand, something huge, something obvious and so big of a message. And obviously just a flag, it has its meanings and connotations, but as an artist, I gotta put my own spin on it and I have to make it represent me as an artist and what I like to make and what I want to represent. And so again, the flag was my first thought, because what is more representative of a nation than your very symbol nation has chosen to represent you on a global stage? But I had to add a few things. So in Ukrainian, we have a phrase that we say, which is Slava Ukraini. You might have heard me say it quite a few times on this channel when I make artwork, because again, a lot of my artwork is Ukrainian based. And this phrase actually means glory to Ukraine. When we greet each other, especially these days with the war going on, we say to each other, hey, Slava Ukraini. And then a person will reply, Heroyam Slava, which means glory to our heroes. It's a way to sort of respect all the people who are currently, you know, fighting for us and fighting for our freedom, and even everyone before us who had fought for us to have our cultural identity. So it's just an acknowledgement, and it's just become such a strong part of our identity. But these two things, which for us are the most important things, to put them together felt like, again, very obvious, maybe, possibly, but I was going for obvious. I was going for a statement. I was going for something that was so blatantly, unironically Ukrainian to piss them off, so that they know, and they will forever know, that it's very difficult to erase us. And that's the theme that I was going for with this. I'm just going to go into the reasons why I actually had to cut this piece. So obviously it's massive, and if I had a studio or a warehouse or a large enough shed in a garden, I could hold this piece myself. Unfortunately, I live in London in a flat and I don't have space for this kind of piece. And honestly, if I even could have brought it into the flat, it would 100% be a friend's moment. Of walking up those stairs, because it wouldn't fit in the lift, nor would it go up the stairs, nor could anyone honestly carry it, because it is so heavy. It is, I know that 40 kilos doesn't sound that much, but you know, like when it's across 3 meters, and also I'm not gonna lie, again, I didn't think about the structural integrity of this piece. So the backboard is not even one full piece. It is 3 pieces that I managed to attach together. So that shit was bendy, okay? Thankfully, my sister took it into her shed and it lived there for, I think probably like 1.5 years, maybe. I had many opportunities. I did end up showing it one more time after in a gallery in London, in Fitzrovia at the Wolf Gallery. Thank you so much again. But after that, I had a few plans with it, but a lot of those plans fell through, unfortunately, and I couldn't get it out to show, to be honest. So maybe it was the size. At least it's a lesson learned. I'm not gonna make anything this big, and if I do, I will need to make it disassembleable. Okay, note to myself, note to future Nastya, make it disassembleable. Let me just start with the sort of basics of it. Again, I don't have any footage of me making this piece, sadly, because it was, again, a very stressful time in my life, and I was so stressed with getting this finished. I didn't even think about, you know, let me take a video of me making this because I want to see it in the future. Literally no. All I did was take pictures because I needed to make an entire show development file to show them how I came up with all my ideas. But you know what? I love explaining how I make stuff and what inspired me. So frankly, I had a blast making this. It brought me back to my coursework days. So the way I started this project was that I did do all my plans on my iPad. So my iPad at the time was my lifesaver. I planned this entire project on my iPad before I even touched the materials. I didn't even like know what it was going to be made out of, how I was going to execute this plan, but I just knew that this was the idea and I was going to make it, okay? And so I had a few discussions with my tutor at the time. My initial idea, so as you can see, there's the text, there are the flags, it's all made up of faces. And my initial plan was to make every single face, you know, 3D. So all of the blue would have been 3D and I would have just painted all of it. And having discussed with my tutor, she was like, look, that is so much work and it's gonna look kind of one-toned, I guess. And at the time I was like, oh, no, but I wanna do it in 3D. And FYI, I'm a very stubborn person, so if someone tells me something and I don't like it, I'm not gonna listen. Then I ended up looking at the costs of the materials I was looking to use. And girl, that brought me back into reality. I don't have that kind of money. Not possible. So then I was like, you know what? I'll take your advice. This entire project, again, I made every component at home. And then on my last 4 days, I came into university to bring it all together. And that was the first time I had ever seen anything remotely final about this piece. I saw the final project for the first time in that moment, okay? I didn't know physical testing. If only you could understand my sheer like, shit, I made this. It was surreal, I can't believe, because usually I fuck up so hard every single time, so it was amazing. The only planning I did was that to understand what size faces I wanted to make. I wanted them vaguely to be the size of a real face. I cut out paper shapes and plastered it all over my uni flat. In the longest wall that I had, and again, even then, that wall was not large enough to accommodate the whole. And when I did that, I was like, yeah, that's amazing. That seems small enough for me to manage. If only I knew. Then became the process of me actually molding the faces. So again, I used air dry clay, and my first attempt, terrible. You wouldn't even think I was an artist. What is that? He's looking like the Sandman from Spider-Man. Now, then I was like, okay, this needs to come out perfect. I can't do this. Let's make it less expressionate. Because before this, I had literally never done a face before out of clay. I'd only made half a face. And so my next attempt was this one, and that was that. So I ended up casting it, had a silicone mold at home, and then I started using acrylic resin at first. And then the company that I was buying from just discontinued it and it stopped working. So I literally had like 10 faces made and I was like, hey, where is it? And they're like, oh, we don't have it. So then I end up moving on to plaster resin, which was a lot easier to work with actually. Once I had most of the faces done and I was quite happy, then the production line started. I would cast a few and then I would end up painting the next set. It was in batches, right? And my entire room was just covered in plaster. It was so messy. The whole floor just had faces all over it. Again, horrific. Very scary when you're sleeping. And then I ended up deciding, you know, what paint I wanted to use because I wanted to keep the mateness of this material. So as you can see on the back, it's very plastery, just matte, nothing going on. And then I decided to paint all of them red. Red was my chosen color because obviously red is quite symbolic. Red is the color of blood. Red is also the color of our second flag along with black, which is our insurgent army flag. This piece is the only piece that I have left from this project that I can keep as like a memento separate from the actual piece because it's also blank, it has nothing on it. Now, as for the patterns on the back, each face has a pattern. There are 3 patterns which I made, and Ukraine is a very, very large country. Each region has its own sort of pattern identity because we have so many groups of people in the country that the culture is not the same from one end to the other. Every region has its own style. It's either floral, geometric, maybe more colors. Obviously, trying to get that many regions and that much diversity into one piece can be quite a lot. But in my case, I could not afford the time to sit and make an individual pattern for the whole country. So I decided to take 3 motifs, which was floral, geometric, and the organic shapes. And I came up with these 3 designs. You know, I was inspired by like makeup artists such as Microsoft. This was the piece that this was the makeup look she did that inspired me. But these were all hand painted. So I sat in my room and I just hand painted every single face. Every single face. And I also had to plan out which faces I needed to paint because they have to go in order. So it has to go like floral, geometric, flowy. Obviously, I then had to plan out on the text, because each face, then the stamp is the same as well, what face had to be what. And then I did that all on my iPad and I numbered it, so 1, 2, 3. Also include that fact that most of the faces were going to be cut. There was not a lot of faces that were going to be completely whole. But as for the text there with the red, again, I did it on my iPad on Procreate, and I just got a brush that I liked that had quite a lot of texture, and I hand wrote Slava Ukraini, which looked something like. I used the laser cutter to cut out the stencil of the text on the thicker card so that it could really hold, like if paint got on it, it wouldn't just morph and break off easily. And then I stuck it all together to make a really massive stencil. Okay, so I had an initial sketch idea where I wanted the faces to look more realistic, right? But then when I ended up actually etching it onto some lino, I just thought it was doing a little too much, especially considering this piece was already so dense and so much to look at already. I really thought about simplifying the whole thing. So that sadly was a ruined piece of lino. So yes, I went to simplify my designs, looking at this sort of photography where it was very shadow heavy, and I came up with these new. Also, the simpler, the better for me to actually make the piece. With that said, I then went to buy my board, which I did, and then I also went to buy some fabric. So this piece is actually made out of canvas. And what I had done was, obviously the canvas was plain. I didn't have any color on it, it was just white. But I wanted to keep it this pastel color so that it wasn't too bright, because obviously really bright blue, really bright red, really bright yellow, there's a lot going on. It needed some contrast. So I did some Googling, some researching, and I found out India ink actually works really well as a dye. As you can see here, I went into my garden because that was the only place that was large enough to fit this fabric, and I started dyeing it with my India ink. And then once I had pulled it up and stretched it onto my wood, it looked like this. I got it pretty even, thankfully, so props to me. And I staple gunned the fabric to the back of the board. And with that began the process of me sort of assembling the piece. So I used the stencil, got my red paint out, painted the whole board, and then I started lino printing my designs onto the fabric. I had some difficulty because the paint I had and the usual technique did not work really well with this fabric. This fabric was not taking the paint very well. So I had to improvise, and I just got fabric paint, but I diluted it with water quite heavily to make it quite runny. And then I put a lot of white to make it more opaque. I had a base layer, and then I had the shadow layer, and then on top I had the pattern layer. I then also kept this waterline design because I just thought it was quite fitting to have the faces look like they're emerging out of something. Okay, and as for cutting the faces, I ended up, once I was done with all of my printing, I got tracing paper and traced every single face where the text had gone over it so that I knew what to cut on what face, and obviously tracing paper so that I could reverse the cut so that it was actually the correct way round rather than the wrong way. And then began the process of me cutting the absolutely amazingly painted faces that I had. Now this was another heartbreak in and of itself because all of that time and dedication to hand painting every single face, and I had to cut them. This was the worst part of the project. This took the longest. I definitely underestimated how much time it took. And again, my poor friend, which I enlisted to help me, had to do this as well. It was terrible. We literally did not leave that uni room for like 3-4 days. And you know, again, because of me running out of time and my horrible planning, I just used glue to glue them on, but these are really well glued on. Alongside this project, I actually had to write a dissertation, and this dissertation was quite a psychic move, to be honest with you. We had to do the dissertation before our actual degree showing. So I submitted my project literally on like February 10th, something like that. And then February 22 was when the conflict began, and this was my title. If that's just a little bit uncanny and unsettling, I don't know what else is, because there it was, especially with the titles of each section. But I'm not going to go too deeply into this. I do have this, and if anyone's interested in having a look at it, I will put it up somewhere, maybe as a added bonus, maybe on Patreon if I start making one. I also have a Ukrainian version of this, so if anyone wants to read it in Ukrainian who watches me, they can do so themselves. So that sort of brings me to the conclusion of how I made this piece. The reasons why, again, it's very much obvious. I think it was a very large shout of national identity, and for me to feel like I was contributing to, well, obviously I wasn't contributing with something that was useful to fight, but it's sort of a contribution of a moral boost. And with all of that yapping, I think it's finally time to actually take a look at me destroying my masterpiece. So let's go. It was as easy as getting a saw and an X-Acto and just going ham on this thing. I used the X-Acto just to cut the fabric in the areas that I wanted to then go in with a saw so that they all kind of stayed together and I could preserve all of that fabric that I lovingly printed on. So I just did this into 5 pieces, like I said. It took a long time. I had help from my mum, thankfully. It was not an easy day. It was a lot of manual labour, and I was so sore the next day that I hope I never have to do this again. Ever. By this point, I was also delirious, rain was coming, and I was just like, you know what, let's dance the pain away. Let's just dance, because nothing else is going to make me feel better. And then I was humbled very quickly when I realised, what the hell am I doing? And I stopped. And with that, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, share it with your friends and family, and make sure you press that notification bell so you know when I upload next. I also have just launched my website, which I'll be updating very soon with some new things, some new products, and check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and yeah, bye.